Hello, and welcome back to Laurence Plays Factorio Planetary Pioneers, where we're back on Norvis again, because there's been some more development on this planet. We've been expanding out, making things work a bit better, making some improvements here and there, and I think it'd be nice to have a bit of a look at it. The headline for this video is going to be this area over here, where we have a little biter zoo. So you might remember in the previous video I talked about the area that Sophia and I think Tristan had set up, where they're gathering in the biter eggs from these spawners here and then passing them out to a station over here where they can then be taken away by train whenever we need them. And this is all working fine. We're producing a supply of the eggs, they're being brought over here, and then the trains can indeed come and get them. And we've got the ice chests over here to make sure that the eggs stay nice and fresh and they don't spoil, they don't go off, and that's working quite well. However, the problem with this system is that there's only 4 spawners here, and we seem to be rather hungry for biter eggs, and 4 spawners is not creating them at quite the rate we would like. And so an expedition was mounted to go out to an outside the artillery range of the main part of the factory, which, well, I was going to say, as we can see, extends out to, and then realised I couldn't see it. But okay, up here there is one of the artillery trains, and you can see the red thing goes out about this sort of distance from the edge of the walls, and that'd be about to about here probably. So this was outside artillery range, and therefore there were quite a lot of biter nests there, and that meant we were then able to go charging in over there. And when I say we, I mean basically Mark and Sophia. They went out there, they pacified the biters, they went out with lots and lots of capture rockets, and they captured lots and lots of the biter spawners. So now we have an enormous number of them over here, and in theory that means we can gather huge quantities of biter eggs. Similarly to previous systems you've seen, we have a train that will come in over here and will drop off a large quantity of the bioflux to make sure everything is kept nice and supplied. And that's triggered by monitoring the amount of bioflux in the whole Roboport system. So if we have a look here, you can see we're reading the logistics network content, we're outputting that on a belt to here, and then we're saying if it's less than 500, then output minus 1600 bioflux out from the system, and that will send that down over to the station, and we'll call for another train to be brought over. The train is then unloaded into the purple chests you can see here, which means all the bioflux will immediately be taken out and passed over to these yellow chests over here, and we've got a system for dumping spoilage out onto the belt here, where it'll be taken up to these heating towers to be burnt off and disposed of, and then the bioflux can sit in here. And as you can see at the moment, we have 1,000 of it, and it's getting a little long in the tooth. It's starting to go off a little bit, at least this stack is. Some of it's not doing too badly though. But eventually, yeah, every so often the bots will come over, they'll grab some bioflux, and they'll bring it over to whichever chest is starting to get a little bit low. Each one of these is asking for 5 at a time, and then feeding them into the captive spawners in order to make sure they stay full of fuel, full of food, and carry on working. Now, as you probably know, if they run out of food, they will turn back into normal biter spawners and start spawning biters, and that's why there's quite a lot of laser turrets scattered around this part of the factory as well, and they're all filtered down to only attacking biters. So if we do have biters appearing, they'll all be disposed of nice and quickly, and hopefully that'll keep the whole system nice and safe. And then over here we have a timer circuit that watches for an absence of train and a timer signal that is lower than the threshold that we've set. And if that's the case, then it outputs 1 clock signal. That then goes over to this combinator over here, which has a loop back set on it, and that just checks that for as long as there is no train in the station, it will then loop that clock signal back round, so it'll carry on counting. And then at the bottom down here, we're checking to see if the clock signal is greater than or equal to the threshold signal, and if it is, then it passes that bioflux signal back out through the combinator over to the station over here, so we can then request a train. This is there to ensure that a train doesn't sort of pull up in the station, unload into these chests, and then clear off, and then we end up calling another train because we're still transporting all the bioflux over from here to the yellow chests up here. And apparently Sophia reckons that 2,000 ticks is going to be long enough for enough of the bioflux to be brought over that we shouldn't then automatically be re-triggering. And I think he's probably right. That should be absolutely fine. And so that keeps all the spawners fed. But when some part of the factory requires some eggs, well, that's when the exciting stuff happens. Over here we've got what is basically the same sort of system that we've seen in the mall area, where when it triggers, the requirements are divided evenly between all the different inserters. So we should end up getting a 16th of the number of eggs that are requested into each one of these. We have 78 captive spawners over here, as you can see, and each one of those will fill up to 100 eggs. So that means we can send out 7,800 eggs anytime a train wants to come in and grab some. And we are very, very deliberately keeping all of the eggs inside the spawners, because if we do that, then we don't need to use cool boxes. They will just stay fresh and fully healthy, and that means we don't need to worry about them hatching. We do still have the lasers in here in case something goes wrong with that, but that's to make sure it should all be okay. Oh, and here is a train with some bioflux. You can see it's getting automatically unloaded here. The bot's coming over to grab it and take it over to the yellow chests up here, just as you'd expect, like that. The train then departs, and after the train has departed, we now see this counter has started up to make sure we've got enough time to empty the station over here. That will eventually get to 2,000, and at that point, we'll be ready to then start sending the signal over to the station if we need any more. Anyway, I was talking about the pickup station. And so, when a train arrives here, the request for Bottered Eggs is sent out from the output of the LTN station. It's passed along here, and that sets up the requests and the counters and so on, as we've seen before. And so that will then load the station up. And that sends a signal out to all of the inserters to very, very quickly unload the required number of Bottered Eggs. And as they unload, that number is fed along this red cable here, and then back over to the brains over here, which monitors how many have been unloaded by feeding it into this combinator down here, which is a simple counter. Each time a pulse signal comes in on the input here, it adds it onto the number it's counted up to, and then it passes it out the other side. Down here, we're then multiplying it by -1, and then here we're combining that with a signal that's coming in from the station, subtracting one from the other essentially, and then whenever that's bigger than 0, we're passing out a green signal along the cable. And that means that as soon as we've taken out the number of eggs that have been requested and put them into the blue chests over here, then the inserters will be turned off again and we'll stop unloading. And that means if we have a train coming out for only, say, 2,000 eggs, we'll unload 2,000 eggs into the blue chests, and then the inserters will all stop. Now, putting them into blue chests is all very well, but a blue chest is a requester chest, not a provider chest. So how does that work? Well, that works because in the blue chest we've ticked trash unrequested, which means the bots will then go, oh, there aren't supposed to be eggs in there, there's only supposed to be 5 bioflux in there, and that also helps to get rid of any spoilage that appears in them, and they'll immediately fly over and take that away. Now, because there are blue chests over here that's requesting those eggs, then they'll be brought straight to the blue chest and put into there to be loaded into the train. But if there's ever any overspill, any excess eggs can be brought over here to be put into the boxes over here, which are filtered to Bottered Eggs specifically, and they'll immediately be unloaded and dumped onto the belts here to be burned up in the heating towers so we can get rid of them and we don't risk them hatching. And that works quite neatly. The other part of this system is that there's then another timer which once again monitors for whenever there's a train in the station, and whenever there is no train in the station, so train is equal to 0, then it outputs the output of the clock, and there is a clock being fed into it from over here, I think. And then when that climbs up to the threshold for this one is 3,000, at that point we say, okay, we're ready for another train to come out because we've probably got enough eggs. So if we watch one of these things, you can see that, there we go, it's still, okay, no, it's still passing the eggs out. We might have brought the train slightly too soon. It's hard to say. But the idea is the spawners will continue to output the eggs, put them into the boxes here, and as you can see they've appeared in the trash slots, which means the bots will come over and grab them, and then deliver them over to the train. And eventually the train will leave and deliver the eggs to where they're required. It's possible the threshold value is set slightly low at the moment, because the idea of this system was that we weren't supposed to have another train come out until there were 100 eggs available in each one of the spawners. Now you can see this one's got up to 10 already, so it's doing quite well. We've apparently got enough eggs, and there we go, off heads the train again. And the counter down here is, well, it's at 300, 400 and so on, and it's heading up to 3,000. And once it gets there, we can then pass this signal, which is 7.8 thousand Bottered Eggs, saying that's the total number that should be available, over into the station. And the reason we've had to do all of this complicated stuff is because you can't attach cables to biter nests. It won't accept that. You can't read how many eggs are in a biter nest. And so we need to have a timer over here that is waiting for the nest to be full again. So it's at 25%, and when this completes it'll be at 30%, and so on and so on. So it is filling up fairly quickly, but then the timer is also going up quite quickly and is nearly there. So yes, this 3,000 I think needs to be a little bit higher. But never mind, that's an easy enough thing to tweak. And so this system is working quite nicely. As you can see, we've got a steady stream of trains coming in, and they're able to take away a large number of eggs as they're ready. And I think Sophia's quite pleased with this system, I can't say I blame him. It works very, very nicely. There's been a few sort of little fiddly bits, like getting the station timers set up and all the programming around there, for which he's had a little bit of help from myself and Tristan, with Tristan being in charge of this station and myself of this one over here. But mostly it's been his work, and yeah, it's working well. We are now producing a supply of eggs, and most importantly, there's no risk of them going off in the system over here, and we're not burning through enormous amounts of ice to keep them in that state. So you might ask, why are we growing literally tens of thousands of Bottered Eggs and shipping them out by the train load over to the mall? Well, there are a few things, as I talked about before, that require them. So we've got a couple of machines down here that are making the biolabs. Those are the more efficient science labs that we can use, that give us an extra doubling of how effective each science pack is. And this stacks nicely with any productivity researchers or productivity modules we put in, because they're separate things and therefore they multiply together, so you still get the full bonus of that doubling. instead of it being just added on to the normal productivity. So that's really nice, because over here we're churning through them and recycling them in an attempt to get higher quality ones, because we want the best quality science labs we can get, because then we can put high quality productivity modules in them and get the maximum bonus out of those for the number of them we can make, because they're quite expensive and quite difficult to make, because those also require Bottered Eggs. And so over here in the other side of the mall area, I've expanded the previous module system to start producing tier 3 modules of all the different types as well. And so you may or may not remember, but initially we had a system over here where this machine will make tier 1 modules of whatever type is required. This one will make tier 2s. And then we had a smattering of machines scattered around, and I think they've mostly been removed. Okay, there's loads of quality module making machines over here, but ignoring those for the moment, we then had a few machines scattered around that were trying to make the tier 3 modules. And the way this works is, at the bottom down here, we have the brains for this part of the system, where we are looking at the number of each different type of module that we have in the logistics system. And then we're saying, if there's less than 500 of that module type, start making them. And if there's more than 1,000 of that module type, stop making them. So the way this works is that we monitor for if there is ever less than 500, then we will output a green tick and a speed module. The green tick is then fed back into the other side of the machine over here, where we're saying if you've got that green tick and there is still less than 1,000 of those types of modules, then carry on making them. But as soon as you get over 1,000, that green tick will disappear, and this will reset. We'll lose the green tick so that we won't have this bit, and then we won't make any more of those modules until this drops back down to 500 again. And so that adds in some nice hysteresis. The idea being that whenever you dip below 500, you will then make another 500, plus a few more if you're still using them. But then once you hit 1,000, you won't make a new one each time one is made and then go and just keep restarting. Because if you do that, then, well, all these machines, well, will pull in a supply of the circuits they need to make the tier 1 modules, and then as soon as they're told to stop making them, they'll dump them all out onto this belt here, and that's what's going on here, and that's why this belt is rather full. But it's okay, because as soon as we start making anything else, that'll all get pulled through. So it's not a problem, it just, as it runs, it will eventually tidy itself back up again. The same is true for all of the other module types down here. They're all wired up, so we'll get exactly the same hysteresis thing for speed and efficiency and overclock and productivity and quality. And so we'll build all these module types until we have 1,000 of each one. We've then got exactly the same thing over here with the tier 2 modules. So once again, we're monitoring for the tier 2 modules. We're trying to keep it between 500 and 1,000, and that's being fed up into here. And this system is exactly the same. The only difference is that instead of just taking in the red and green circuits from this belt and in order to make the tier 1 modules, we also then need to take in the tier 1 modules to take the tier 2. So we can feed in the tier 1 modules from these green chests, and we can feed in the circuits from here, so that'll keep these machines running nicely. And then the completed tier 2 modules will be passed into these boxes up the middle here to be stored. They're available for use in any builds if we ever want to use tier 2s, and once again we can dump out any unneeded circuits onto the belt here where they'll go around to be recycled. Next up is the tier 3 module production, and this is, again, the programming down here is exactly the same. We're monitoring for the number of tier 3 modules of that particular type and trying to keep it between 500 and 1,000, and that's working nicely for the speed modules here. And they're all set up pretty much the same way, except the efficiency ones, which require spoilage, and we might have shortages of that. So there's an additional query in there to make sure that they don't get just stuck on trying to make efficiency modules for all of time. However, the big difference with the tier 3 modules is that they require lots of different other resources. So looking in here, as we said before, the tier 1 modules require green circuits and red circuits. Tier 2 modules require tier 1 modules and red circuits and blue circuits. Fine, they're all the same at that point. Apart from requiring a different initial module, they're all exactly the same. But the tier 3 modules are all a bit different. So they're basically the same as the 2s in that they require the red and blue circuits, and they require one of the modules of the previous tier. But each one requires its own slightly exotic extra product. So as we can see here, the speed modules take in the tungsten triangles. That's not too bad, you just bring them over from Vulcanus, drop them down from space, and then we can bring them over with the robots here. So they'll be dropped into this blue chest, which is just requesting 200 of them, putting them on a belt. That's pretty simple. Efficiency modules, also pretty simple. They require spoilage. And now normally in Factorio Space Age, you have loads and loads of spoilage basically everywhere because stuff just goes off all the time, especially the agricultural science packs. So I think that was probably my main source of spoilage when I was playing vanilla. However, because we're using ice chests everywhere in an attempt to keep things fresh and stable, we're not producing as much spoilage as we normally would. So we don't have a big supply of that available, which is why there's the condition down here on the efficiency modules to say only run when we have enough spoilage to try and make a decent number of modules. Next we have the overclock modules, which are modded ones, which these are extra powerful because they give you a boost to productivity without giving you a penalty to speed. They do give you a huge penalty on energy consumption, but that's not too bad. We have nuclear power plants, so it's not an issue. However, they require dark matter crystals, which we've not even heard of at this point, and we haven't unlocked them, so we're not too worried about these. We aren't going to be making any of those, so we'll skip over those for now. Then we'll look at the quality modules. They require superconductors. Again, that's just bring them over from Fulgora. That's fine. So like the spoilage and the tungsten triangles, we're just chucking those onto a belt up here. That's, again, pretty easy. So we have these belts running down here, and these machines can grab from either of those belts whenever they need anything. So there's a long inserter there and a short inserter there. They can grab them. That's absolutely fine. The tricky one is the final one, the productivity modules, and they require Bottered Eggs. So that's another thing that we're making that requires a steady stream of Bottered Eggs to be brought in. And so in order to allow that to work and to keep them safe, I've done things a little bit differently here. I haven't just got Bottered Eggs going down the belt, because if I did, things would go horribly wrong. They'd probably hatch at some point. And yes, we do have some laser turrets here, but it's kind of wasteful and a little bit dangerous. I just don't really like that idea. And so instead, we've got a series of ice boxes down here, where we're bringing in the dry ice and the Bottered Eggs. We're putting them into, well, they're being requested by the blue chest first, and then they're passed over into here. And we're doing that by just setting the numbers of each that we'd like to have on the combinator here, and then passing that through over to this combinator, where we're subtracting the red signal from the green signal. So we've got the number that are in the box, and then we've got the number that we would like to have, and we're subtracting that from that, and that tells us that we don't need any more Bottered Eggs, thank you very much, but we would like to have another 49 dry ice at this point. That signal is then passed over to this blue chest, where we're setting the requests from the circuit conditions. And so that should work quite nicely. There seems to be a bit of a problem because we seem to have run out of dry ice, which is why we've only got 4 in this box and 1 in this box and none in this one. And as you might remember from previous videos, there is a bug in the dry ice system, unfortunately, which says that if you have any boxes that don't have dry ice in them, then quite a lot of your dry ice boxes will just stop working. And that's a bit unfortunate because some of these eggs are then going to be going off. You can see that one's at 44%. We've got 13 minutes before this becomes a crisis, but at the moment it's a little bit concerning. Hopefully we'll get another trainload of dry ice in before anything happens there. But those, yes, from that, we're then bringing in the eggs, we're bringing in the dry ice, we're putting them into the ice boxes, and then with this inserter in the middle here, that can unload those eggs and put them into the EM machine here. And also, then when the modules are made, they can be taken out by this inserter and put into the other box. So this area is a little bit crowded, a little bit sort of overloaded, and it's not my favourite way to set something up like this, but it was the only way I could squeeze everything in. Because if I put this long inserter here, then the chest would have to be here, then we wouldn't be able to have the 2 pieces of underground belt in there. Those are packed in as close as they could be. Actually, in hindsight, I could have moved that underground up one, and then have that moved up one as well, and then had a short inserter going from there, inputting it into the box here. So it would have been possible to cram things in a little bit more closely and not have overlapping inserters. That's a bit of a shame. Maybe if and when I redesign this thing later, then I will do that. But for now, it works as it is, so we'll just ignore the fact these 2 inserters are trying to sort of phase through each other a little bit. And now I see we've had a trainload of dry ice come in. That's nice. So these systems are starting to work again. So we're probably going to repair these Bottered Eggs back up to the proper, yeah, there we go. You can see its health, its freshness going back up again. And you can also see the dry ice going down quite quickly as we re-chill the ice boxes and bring the eggs back up to proper freshness. And so that works nicely. We are making the 4 types of module that we know about and can do at this point. And it's keeping all the eggs nice and fresh and nothing is going off. Now, the downside of this system is it means we do have a lot of eggs boxes in down along here. And that means that we're getting through a lot of dry ice in order to keep the eggs fresh. Potentially a better way to do it might be to unload the eggs onto the belt up here, have them go down the belt, and then back up another belt and then be fed back into an ice box and try and keep the eggs nice and fresh in a single ice box. That would certainly be possible, but it would require a bit of guesswork to try and make sure that the eggs stayed nice and fresh. It could be worth it though, because then things would be a little bit more efficient. We could potentially keep a much larger number of eggs in the box as well, or at least in the system as a whole. So, this system does work. It is producing all of the things that we want to make. We've got quality modules in all of the machines along here that are making the tier 3 modules, because we would like to have higher quality tier 3 modules. At the moment, I think we have uncommons in there, but we're requesting... No, we have uncommons in there, but we're requesting the rares, because we're trying to get these up to decently high levels of quality module, because that means then we'll get out better modules coming out here, and over here you can say, okay, we don't have any quality ones in here, but in theory we could do. We're probably just taking them away to be used elsewhere. But Mark has declared that this system is not good enough. He would like it to be redesigned and rebuilt with quality churning a bit more in mind. So that's going to be a job for some time in the future for trying to make significantly more and higher quality modules. And so Mark has earmarked an area over here for a load of mall upgrade stuff. So we're going to be moving quite a lot, probably most of the stuff that's here. So this is the basic mall, and then a lot of the stuff that's over here, and giving it and spreading it out a little bit more, and coming up with a system to deal with the quality systems a little bit better, should we say? Because at the moment we haven't designed this area with quality in mind. We've just designed it. Well, this was designed before we'd even thought of quality. So it's just a simple bot mall that is churning out basic stuff that we need large quantities of. Over here, there are some quality churners, so we might be building more of this sort of thing over there. We'll see, because Mark has some plans. I'm not 100% sure what all of them are, but I'm sure it's going to be quite exciting and is going to lead to a lot of rebuilding, shall we say. Continuing with the theme of general upgrades, I was tasked with upgrading the oil refinery to start using the biochambers from Gleba. So these buildings are great because they give you a plus 50% productivity, and that means you don't need as much of the input resource in order to make more of the output resource. We originally hoped and thought, because I misread something when I was making a previous video, that we were going to be able to use the biochambers for the initial oil cracking process, going from crude oil to the heavy, light and petroleum gas. However, I think it was pointed out that the biochambers only have 2 fluid outputs, so you wouldn't be able to get the 3 fluids out of them anyway, even if they were declared to be appropriate for this sort of job. So over here, I've left the top part of this almost exactly as it was, and then we're feeding in down here. I've replaced all of the chemical plants that were previously cracking the oil down from heavy to light and light to petroleum. These have all been replaced with the biochambers. Biochambers, as you may be aware, don't require electricity. Instead of electricity, they require nutrients. And so we discovered that there is an alternative recipe that is very, very good for Norvis, where you can make nutrients from wood. So you bring in wood from wherever, you then add some steam to it to make the wood pulp, and then the wood pulp can be made straight into nutrients. So over here we've got one chemical plant to act as a bootstrap device, and then a row of biochambers for that extra productivity bonus once again. And so, in theory, the way this works is that this biochamber here will constantly run and will produce all the nutrients we need. However, if it ever has any problems and dips down below an acceptable amount of nutrients inside the fueling side over here, then it'll send a signal over to this one, and then this one will kick in to make sure that we never run out of nutrients. And so those can then be passed on to the machine over here, which will then turn those into more nutrients to pass off down the system, yada yada yada, as you'd expect. It doesn't seem to be working quite right though, because sometimes this dips down a little bit too low when all the nutrients have been unloaded from here, and this is running a little bit on the low side. So this 10 probably shouldn't be 10, this should be more like 4. And so if it's starting to starve, then we get this machine to kick in, but otherwise it shouldn't be needed and it shouldn't run. And so then the nutrients that are being passed out here are then being picked up, gobbled up and going back into here. Same is true for this one, and you've got this loop back on all the machines, so in theory they should never starve. This one is having some issues, but that's just because it's filled up completely with spoilage. We need to wait for that to be unloaded. And looking at this, it has just occurred to me that I need to set some filters on these inserters and have the stack inserters only unloading nutrients, and then have a separate inserter that's unloading any spoilage, otherwise the system might end up jamming. It doesn't seem to have caused any problems yet, but it is definitely going to cause problems in the future at some point. So those nutrients then, they're poured down here, they go into all these machines, and we're getting through crazy amounts of nutrients down here, because not only do they have overclock modules, they also have speed beacons as well, and so their fuel consumption is almost 9 times what it would normally be for one of these machines. That is a crazy amount of nutrient they're using up. However, as you can see, well, actually they're not running at the moment because all these things that need to be cracked have already cracked. But this belt is carrying enough nutrients round to keep the whole system running. I will admit, taken a bit of a leaf out of Mike's book for the design here. We've got a belt that's just running around in a constant loop, and that means that as any nutrients on the belt spoil, as you can see some spoilage coming along here and a little bit more up there, it will then be filtered out down here and passed into this heating tower where we're just burning it off. And we've had quite a lot coming through here. This is now up to 1000 degrees C because we've burnt so much nutrient. We should probably take some of the heat off here and use it to boil some water and make some actual electricity. But we're not. We're currently just wasting all that energy. But never mind, it's probably okay. One of the things I will admit I didn't think through properly when I was setting this up was disposal of spoilage from inside these machines. So over here, it was actually absolutely fine because I just had the belt a little distance away like this, which meant I can use long inserters to load the nutrients in and also to take the spoilage out. Unfortunately, down here, I didn't think it through quite as carefully. So we've got the belt coming along here to load in the nutrients. That's great. It's going in through the gap between the pipes. But then I've had to put in these additional inserters here and a rather low down belt here to take the spoilage away. It works. It's not very elegant, but it does. But it's okay. It works. It's sort of mostly fine, basically, kind of. Yeah, okay. Could have been better, but it's okay. This is running off the normal system exactly as it was before. In fact, I tried to keep as much of the original design in here as possible, and as much of the same wiring and logic. And so we've got a green cable coming off from this tank here that's telling these machines that whenever there's more than 10,000 light oil, then start cracking it and turning it into a petroleum gas. And the same down here. Whenever there's more than 10,000 heavy oil, then start cracking it, turning it into light oil. And so that means that we can keep a little bit of it, because we've got some pumps over here with some important logic that's making sure these tanks are full. So whenever a train comes in for heavy oil, we're always ready to fill it up. Now, a slight note here, a train will never come in for some heavy oil because we're not using it anywhere. There is almost nothing on this planet that uses heavy oil. The only thing is making lube, and we're doing that right here, and also feeding that into this station, and we've got a load of tanks for the lube here. So that means that the heavy oil part of this station is never actually going to trigger, but we've got a supply of it anyway, just in case something changes in the future, although that would probably require a mod change because we've had a look through all the recipes. Similarly down here, we've got pumps that are bringing the light oil into here, so we're keeping this station completely full before we even consider cracking any of it down to petroleum gas. So we've always got this nice big buffer. There's always going to be easily enough to fill, well, several trains from down here. But then any overflow from that is what is going into this tank, and then that can be cracked down to produce the petroleum gas, which is then passed over to this station over here, which is also full, but pretty much, because we have loads and loads and loads of all of the oil products. This is all going really well. And putting in all of these productivity boosts is going to help, but it's not really vital. It's just a nice extra thing to have. The other thing I should mention about this block is that I modified the station up here because we're going to start needing wood, and it's kind of full. We've got every one of our city blocks has 4 stations available around it for bringing in and taking away whatever resources are required. So the obvious one here is that you have the crude oil coming in there, and then you have heavy, light, and petroleum being taken away from the other 3 stations. Fine. Okay, this one was then switched over to being lube being taken away. We could take out the heavy oil. We haven't bothered. It's another fluid station. It can provide both of them. That's actually fairly simple. Over here, having this one request both crude oil and wood was a little bit weirder. For one thing, I needed to move all of these tanks over to here, but with the new Factorio fluid mechanics, that's absolutely fine. It's very, very easy to just pipe it away. It required a little bit of pipe spaghetti, but it wasn't too bad. But I also needed to bring the wood in as well, and so I was able to kind of squeeze it in here, and having 4 inserters and 4 chests for each wagon is to be honest, is fine. But then there was quite a lot of spaghetti and fiddling required in order to get the wood being brought out here, and you have to make sure it's balanced, because if you're bringing stuff in by train and you don't balance it, then you end up with the front station being maybe nearly full and then everything else being empty, and then another train comes out to unload and it can't finish unloading into the front station because the front station is completely full, and you end up with a train stuck there, and then you can't bring any more oil in, and everything goes horribly wrong. So this is actually properly balanced. You'll notice that here we're unloading these chests, and then, well, we've got the 2 sides being balanced here, then we'll be balancing the 4 chests together with this splitter, and the same's happening on each of them, and then this belt is coming through here to this one, so we're balancing this one and this one together, and then once again we've got exactly the same thing here with this coming through to here, balancing the first and second ones together. And then this belt creeps all the way under along here, and then they're merged over here. So it is all completely balanced. We should be taking, well, as long as we draw from both sides of the belt equally, we'll be drawing from each chest equally. And even if we don't do that, we'll still be drawing from the wagons equally. We might end up with the ones unloading onto the right side of the belt emptying first, but it'll still be evenly split between the wagons. And that's good enough when we've got this sort of level of throughput, which is very, very low throughput. So that, as I said, is being brought down here. This then required a fair amount of fiddling in order to get the logic right on here. And so we've got a very, very large wood request number down here because we've got a very, very large request threshold set here because we're bringing in fluids. A fluid we're bringing in 100,000 each time a train turns up. So we need a nice big number here and here. And the wood, well, we're not bringing in such a big number here, but by having a really high request but also a really high request threshold, it means we'll request some whenever we've got less than 20,000 wood here, but when we've got at least 20,000 here, we'll be below the threshold, and so we won't trigger again, even though there's nothing like as much as we're requesting down here. It's a slightly funny way of using LTN, and it's because we're trying to do fairly complicated things with it. To be honest, personally, I tend to use LTN in a very, very simplistic way and just assume that every train that turns up will always be full. And in this particular case, they will, but we're doing things a little bit more complicatedly elsewhere, and so this has to be a little bit weird and fiddly. But it does work, and so I'm not going to knock it because it is actually fine. It has also just occurred to me that I could use an underground pipe going from here to here and remove this kink across here, but I assume that was sort of originally in there because, oh yeah, that's probably supposed to be linked through to there. How is this? Is this working at all? Ah, no, this is all horribly broken. Right, okay. So, in theory, all the pipes should be linked together. We should have, these tanks should be supplying all of the refineries. They're not, because there is a pipe coming out here, which is going down to these refineries and these refineries and these refineries, so that's kind of okay. But the top row of refineries is only being fed by this pipe that comes down here, and then this doesn't link into the rest of these tanks over here. This one is only actually linked into this unloading bit here. So this is emptied, filled up this pipe and the inputs for all of these machines along here. But then as soon as these start running, this pipe will empty and we won't be using these. So there's a bit of a problem there. It's very easy to fix, and there are many ways it could be fixed. So an underground pipe there would sort it, because now that will be linked over to all the rest of these and over to the tanks over here. Similarly, we could put in an underground pipe going from there to there, and that would also fix it. There are many ways it could be sorted. We just need to do one of those because it's currently separated off. And I think that one's going to be the nicest because it fits with the rest of the pattern. That said, the other alternative would be, as I was saying, we could put in an underground pipe going from there to down here, in fact, and then remove all of this because we wouldn't need it like that, and that would then be linking this down to here. But we would then also need this pipe over here to link that into the rest of the system. It's all functionally identical. It doesn't matter how we set it up, but that would allow me to then have put sort of straight belts in here and have slightly fewer undergrounds. It would make this area look slightly neater. Is the sort of the reasoning behind that. Now, do we care about how neat it looks? Not really, but sometimes it's nice to go in and tidy things up a little bit. And on that, I think I shall end the video. There's still quite a lot more to talk about on Norvis and some of the other planets, but I think the next video I'm going to talk about quality in a big way. Yes, we've been talking about making the modules over here, and we've been talking about how we're trying to get these things to run a bit more qualitatively, and I know that's not what that word actually means. But there have been quite a lot of quality upgrades on quite a lot of the other modules around the factory, so we'll go out and have a look at those next time. So please make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on that. We'll also be back at 7:30 PM UK time on Monday, when we should be playing some more of this and going out to new planets and building up new things and all kinds of excitement like that. If you'd like to have a shot at the Planetary Pioneers yourself, then you can grab the mod from the Factorio mod portal, install it, start with a seed 11111, that's 5 ones, if you want to play in the same universe as us, at least as far as the updates in the mods will allow it. And if you make some good progress, if you have some interesting builds, then come along and tell us about them in the Discord, because it's always nice to see what other people have been up to. I will also be back on Wednesday, when I shall be playing some more Foundry, unless I've finished it, in which case I shall be playing something else. At this stage, I'm not quite sure what the next game is going to be, but it's almost time for me to choose, because I am very close to finishing Foundry. I just keep finding that I've run out of copper, which is a very familiar problem from certain other games I've been playing. Finally, these videos will, as I say, be coming out every Thursday and Friday, so please make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any of them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.